I have dedicated so much time and energy to learning about covert narcissism. I mean, years and hours on a daily basis, weekly basis, and for so long. And so some people might ask, what's the big deal? Why does this really matter? Some people are just mean. Why put so much energy into this? I'm going to tell you right now, it matters. There is so much damage being done by these mean people. You see, exposure to someone with narcissistic behaviors, it affects you. It affects the way you see the world. It affects your perspective. It affects your self-identity. It affects your sense of self. It affects the way that you interact with the world, with how you function. It affects who you are. You see, they dominate people. These angry reactions and angry outbursts that they have, they're so just off the charts that they start affecting you and who you are. These have huge impacts in your life. Many people don't see them for who they are, and this adds to the problem. They're going to say things like, you are so lucky to have found that one. You're so lucky to be married to this person. And on the inside, you're screaming, what are you, nuts? Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. If you experience covert narcissism as a child, it can truly shape your perspective of the world. It shapes your perspective of people. And this has a huge impact on your own identity and on your viewpoints. You start to think, people aren't safe. Even before you can articulate that, you already have those feelings inside of you. You have the feelings that people have hidden agendas. How about that my communication must be perfect, because if it's not, this other person, no matter whether I think they're safe or not, the other people are going to be reactive to me because that's how my narcissistic parent was. We build the identity that we're not good enough. This greatly affects who you are in life. Now, if the first time that you experience narcissism is as an adult, it still has major impacts. You see, instead of it building your identity, it hijacks your identity. It hijacks your perspective and your views. It can completely change who you are, robbing you of yourself. This steals your ability to trust others. It steals, your peaceful and happy personality and your, go-lucky or even spontaneous interactions with other people. And it replaces it instead with a beaten down version of you. As a culture, we still struggle with not allowing people to talk about this. We struggle to give people the space to talk about mean people in their life. We don't know how to handle this. I mean, you think about bullies, and when a child says to you, well, I'm being bullied, we don't know how to handle this. So we tell this child, well, just walk away, look the other way, ignore them, move on, and these kind of things. But when the bully is living inside your home, you can't do this. You ignore it and you walk away. Let's say you go into the living room. Well, they follow you into the living room. You go into the bedroom and they follow you into the bedroom. You go into the bathroom and they follow you into the bathroom. You can't get away when the bully is in your home. But as a culture, we still struggle to allow people to talk about this. It's like we haven't given ourselves permission to actually identify this as a problem. People blow you off saying, well, you're making a big deal out of nothing. They're such a good guy, or, they're such a great woman. You're just being too sensitive. You need to get a little tougher, or you need to learn to stand up for yourself. But when we try to speak up, or when we try to stand up for ourselves, the problem just gets worse. If you go to a therapist, especially one who doesn't understand covert narcissism, they might even call you out for not being kind, for not being nice as you talk about what your narcissistic spouse or your narcissistic parent is doing. I've even seen comments on my social media, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Facebook, People complaining, in essence, that I'm not being very nice. Well, isn't it ironic that I'm being told I'm not being nice when I'm talking about my narcissistic spouse not being nice? I mean, think of the irony here. I'm trying to just voice up about something that happened in my life that wasn't nice, and I'm being told that I'm not nice. I try to explain it so others can understand, and I get told that I'm being mean. What? I will say this, I do appreciate my followers who have spoken up on my behalf. You've called these individuals out respectfully, and I applaud you for that. You've encouraged them, to listen to the episodes. Don't listen to just a short clip of it. Go listen. Get to know my story. Learn who I am. Okay, learn what my kids and I have experienced, and then maybe you can understand where I'm coming from. So thank you to those who have stood up and spoken up in this situation. We need more of that in our world. Kindly and respectfully, yes, because that's who we are. If you do appreciate what I'm doing here on this podcast, the simple and free favor that I ask from you is that you subscribe to this podcast on the YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, social media, TikTok. That's all I ask. And leave a review if you can. It's a simple way to keep spreading the word. Now, where is all this covert narcissism coming from? I want to talk about emotional nourishment. Emotional nourishment is a key for anyone's emotional development. Now, let's talk about what this is. Emotional nourishment is not about how I feel towards another person. It is about acknowledging and caring for how they feel. So think of physical nourishment for a minute. If I cook this amazing meal, and let's say it's a healthy meal, it's full of meats and potatoes and vegetables, and I'm kind of hungry now, but if I fix this meal and I'm so proud of it and I feed it to my child, but my child is, gluten-free, and let's say they're celiac, but I just feed it to them. This is a physically nourishing meal, not to them. It will actually harm them. No matter how much effort I put into the meal, this meal will harm them. I'm not caring for their needs. A child that is not physically nurtured cannot grow and develop in a healthy manner. They will be underdeveloped. Now let's talk about emotional nourishment. I don't care how much effort I put into loving and caring for somebody. It isn't about my feelings. It's about theirs. It's about giving them safety for their feelings without judgment, no matter what those feelings are. Emotional nourishment is about being accepted and valued for who you are, being able to express your thoughts, feelings without fear of judgment. In other words, it's having emotional safety. It's about the other person. This sure does not sound like the environment with a covert narcissist. In fact, it's the exact opposite. But without emotional nourishment and safety, emotional growth stops. Just like physical growth stops when a child is not physically nourished. So a person that does not have emotional nourishment will be emotionally underdeveloped. Now, I want to talk about how this impacts you, but then we're going to talk about the covert narcissist. So think of it this way. In this relationship that you have experienced with a covert narcissist, you lost your emotional nourishment and safety, right? They did not emotionally nourish you. If you are with a covert narcissist and you think you're getting emotional nourishment, then we need to talk. Rather, they emotionally attack you. There's not emotional safety, or rather emotional war. As a result, your emotional growth stopped. You became emotionally frozen in this relationship, and in fact, probably digressed. I hear from survivors, I became an emotional wreck. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not spontaneous. I'm not happy. I'm not peaceful. I don't know what's wrong with me. I cry all the time. I have no motivation in life. This is emotional development that stopped and even digressed. Now, we have many generations built up with a lack of emotional nourishment cycling through our families. Research suggests that covert narcissism often stems from early childhood experiences. So this environment that you are experiencing with this covert narcissist in your life, where your emotional growth stopped, think about the covert narcissist and their background, their childhood, their family environment, their lack of emotional nourishment, and thus their lack of emotional growth and development. Their emotional needs were not met. This can be from emotional abuse. It can be from emotional neglect, but it can also be from excessive catering. This is equally damaging. Let's talk about emotional abuse. When they were sad or upset or frustrated or even happy and excited and they got too loud, they're told to stop. They're told they're wrong. They're told to get over it. The kids must be seen and not heard attitude. Let's go to the other extreme, overindulgence. When they're discouraged or frustrated with themselves, they're told, no, you're wrong. You're really a great child. You're a great person. And their feelings are pushed down. You should be proud of who you are. Well, that doesn't line up with how they feel right then. When they're happy, overindulging parents will say, well, see, I told you how great you were. Again, not acknowledging their feelings. What's missing? What's missing is a parent who is simply present to them, emotionally available to them, validating their feelings, just sitting there with them and their feelings. Emotional safety refers to a state of feeling secure emotionally in your relationship. Safe to express your feelings, your thoughts, your vulnerabilities without fear or judgment. It is a foundational aspect of a healthy relationship. Without this, relationships struggle. The absence of emotional safety can have profound and lasting impacts on individuals and the dynamics of their interactions and their future relationships. One of the biggest consequences of that lack of emotional safety is the suppression of genuine expression. When people do not feel emotionally safe, they don't express their true thoughts. They don't express their true feelings. They're afraid of being vulnerable because it leads to criticism and judgment, even abandonment and rejection. This suppression creates a facade. That facade is the covert narcissism. It prevents authentic connections. It leads to these internalized feelings of loneliness and isolation. Many covert narcissists feel alone and isolated. I get that. But their own facade that they have put around their vulnerabilities from their lack of emotional safety and their background is what's in the way of the emotional development. Over time, the inability to express oneself freely erodes your self-esteem and it fosters resentment. Did you ever feel like the covert narcissist was just loaded with anger sitting just under the surface, but you really couldn't put your finger on why? You couldn't figure out what it was really, all about? It's like the anger was there all along. Well, this is why. Because of that inability to express themselves, the inability to find their safety and their emotional safety, and this started in childhood, fosters resentment. This breeds mistrust in relationships, and it is completely damaging to one's mental health. This can lead to extreme anxiety, depression, and stress. And they bring this then into the relationship with you. And you're like part of the chain. You're part of that cycle. They just pass this lack of emotional nourishment right on to you. It's time to break that chain. It's time to break it with our own children. In a world where emotional education has not been taught, we have generations of alcohol abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect, all of this that's run through so many families. And now add to it the current push towards therapy, counseling, and mental health. And that's a good push. But like I talked about last time, narcissistic people learning good behaviors creates covert narcissism. So what we have is emotionally damaged individuals with stunted emotional growth who have learned what they're supposed to be, their good behaviors, while underneath they still have their narcissistic reactions. They're still doing all the damage. How do we stop this? It's time to focus on emotional nourishment, giving each other the space for our own feelings. That's it. Let's help our kids by focusing on emotional nourishment towards them. My teenage son said to me one time, these words out of his mouth changed my approach as a parent so much. He said to me, it was during a time when he was really struggling. He wasn't happy. He was really fighting with depression and anxiety. And he said to me, Mom, I know you feel better when I'm happy. And I'm sorry that I'm not helping you to feel better. But I can't keep pretending to be happy. These words from my son drove deep in my heart. It wasn't his job to help me feel better, but he recognized that that's what was taking place. I could easily see how he felt that way because I did feel better when he was happy. Of course, we all do when our children are happy, but it's not their job to help us to feel better. It is our job to nourish their feelings, their emotions, and give them safety to express. I was so happy that he would express this to me. And it cut deep, but that was my healing to be done, not his. I needed to show up as a mom, not as a liability. There is so much to learn about emotional growth for so many of us. And I'm super excited to see where this journey goes and the value and the benefit that this brings to so many future generations. It's time to turn all this around. So start pondering this. Let's start exploring emotional nourishment together. I wish you so much peace and your kids on this journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism podcast. If you are struggling with covert narcissism in your life, I help people to heal from covert narcissistic abuse. If you are struggling with the isolation, the self-doubt, and the obsessive thinking, then this is the program for you. I offer both group and individual options. This is live, personalized coaching that is specific to covert narcissism. Reach out to me anytime. You can find me at my website, covertnarcissism.com. I'm not a therapist and you are not a victim. I am a coach and you are a survivor. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson and the Covert Narcissism podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. It does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.